The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
Boarders, and welcome to Board with Video Games, the gaming podcast that strives for the right balance of coverage for games you play on your table and on your television. You can think of us as the Scott Lucas and Ryan Harding of gaming podcasts. We're a proud member of the PSVG Podcast Network and thrilled to be a part of the Dice Tower Network as well. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle, and joining me on this co-op adventure, the guy who keeps it copacetic, Josh. How are you doing?
You high-fiving so-and-so. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing excellently. This is so weird, dude. It's just us.
It's just us.
Just the two of us.
I don't want to get copyrighted.
I know. That's why I'm stopping right there. So, Scott Lucas and Ryan Harding, do you know who they are?
Yeah, I just said you high-fiving so-and-so.
Okay, just making sure. I didn't know if that was... What's that?
You high-fiving mother-father?
But do you know, like you know the song clearly.
Yeah.
But you know the name of the band?
Local H. Yeah,
okay, just making sure.
I live Local H. No, I know. Sure. I know another song you weren't referencing.
Okay.
Randomly.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know. Sometimes people will know a song, but they won't know who sang it, or something like that. So I was just trying to make sure. When
I see copacetic in my head, it goes, you got to keep it copacetic. And I know that's not the lyric. That's the Offspring. So right. I always mess those up.
Yeah. But Local H. That was a band that apparently I think still exists, but I didn't really totally realize they still do.
They do still tour. I see them every once in a while pop up on an opening for someone or playing a casino.
Yeah. So good for them. Josh, this is weird. We've gone weeks and weeks and weeks of having guests and having really great guests.
Yeah, I think we've peaked.
It's all downhill from here, which we can't say because we actually have some really great guests booked in the future too.
Yeah, that's rude of me to say to our future guests.
So what's been going on, man? We haven't really had a chance to just talk.
Yeah, it's been crazy. We've been going through the scheduling, rescheduling, recording on nights we don't normally record.
I know.
Being flexible and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I feel like we're doing some good stuff. I hope that the content we're putting out, people are enjoying. I mean, we did get feedback from a future guest who started listening because of a past guest. So
right.
That's always nice to see and hear. But yeah, I mean, it's nice. I think it's nice for us to just kind of be able to talk and not have to worry about all that stuff.
Yeah. And I think one thing that came up that was talked about a little bit from last week's show that we had Emerson on was that, just so everyone knows, we weren't trying to be super rude and interrupting him like it sounded at the very beginning of the podcast. There was a delay in our recording. Like when he would talk, we wouldn't hear it right away. So we weren't trying to be rude. And it got better as the podcast went on because we kind of got in the groove of knowing how that was going to work. But that wasn't on purpose. I
stopped listening to our episodes. I'm glad I did because that probably would have drove me nuts if I listened to it.
Yeah, it wasn't perfect, but yeah, we weren't trying to be rude. It just, there was a little bit of a connection issue and it wasn't ideal recording conditions, but I still think it was a solid episode. And we obviously appreciate everyone who's been on recently being on. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a good time.
Yeah. I had a great time last week. I was happy that everyone could hear the stories that I heard from him. Mm-hmm. Because I think you'll agree, I don't know that you could duplicate how he tells his stories.
Well, it's just like anytime you tell a story secondhand, right? It's going to lose some impact and some effect and probably some detail. So it was a pretty fascinating just to hear him talk about everything and having Jamie on and William on. It's been a whirlwind.
Yes.
It has been a whirlwind.
It has.
Hey, we actually have kind of a lot to talk about on this show. I don't know how long this is going to go. I know we're both super tired.
Yep.
And I think we have a lot to talk about. We'll see where we get with all of it. I'm excited to talk about a lot of it, but I'm very interested to figure out exactly how the show ends up. One other thing that has been brought to my attention, and I knew it, but I started listening to the shows more regularly to try to fix editing and some other things. I say the word like a lot.
You don't self-edit because
no, I know,
drive yourself nuts.
I know, but it is interesting though, because it was something I used to do when I was a lot younger and it was brought up to me. So I consciously thought about the fact that I said it all the time. And every time I was about to say it, I would pause and try to think of something different to say.
Yeah.
So I'm aware, and I'm going to try to fix it a little bit because it is.
Don't kill yourself over it.
Oh, I'm not going to. But it is a lot, and it's more when I'm like telling. Let's see, I just did it right there. It's more when I'm telling a story or just kind of going with the flow of things than it is when I'm kind of sticking to what we plan to talk about. So I don't apparently think quite as well on my feet as I thought I did without using a ton of filler words.
When I was doing PSVG a lot, I was told about my S's and how they sound. I can't change that, but for a month straight, anytime I was on PSVG, it drove me nuts. I just have to accept that you're going to hear this a lot from me because that's how I speak. And you're lucky I don't have a proper New England accent because it would be way worse to listen to me than just this is from me.
Well, could you imagine if you had a proper, legit New England accent? Not that you don't, but if you had like a really...
When I go to Fenway Park, I do have one. It just comes out.
And then if I had my very northern Minnesota accent, which doesn't come out very often at all anymore, compared to people still tell me that I have one, but it's not as pronounced as it was. Could you imagine if we both had that? We were doing this podcast, how amazing it would be.
We could do that one. It's easy for me to slip into it, but we could do that for one show.
Yeah, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to slip into it without it sounding a little forced, unless I'm around my family or other people who tend to speak that way. The easy thing is people will pull out the movie Fargo and say, "Oh, that's what people sound like from there." And most people from Minnesota or North Dakota will get angry and say, "No, that's not what we sound like." And it's a little maybe over, or it's a little pushed maybe, but it's really not that pushed. It really isn't. Especially if you get to like, oh man, see, I'm noticing it every time now. But especially if you get to northern Minnesota, it's something that is not, you definitely hear people with the really long vowels, and it's something that I do on occasion. But yeah, I think it's a goal we should have. Maybe just do one show where we just slip into the accents we had growing up and the places that influenced us. It could be fun.
So, listeners, if you like this, Kyle and I have often been talking about doing our own different podcasts just about the things we talk about
at the beginning of the show.
Before we record, and this is exactly, I forgot we were recording. This is exactly what we talk about before we record. So,
it's true.
If that's what you like, let us know.
We could always just add it at the end of the episode, too. Once the credits roll, it could be stuck on the end there. If people wanted, they could listen. But hey, we should probably get to the actual show. So thanks so much for joining us this week, everyone. As always, if you have any feedback, questions, suggested topics, hit us up at Board with VG on Twitter, or check out all the awesome stuff posted over on Instagram. Also, Board with VG. We are a proud part of PSVG, and PSVG is on Patreon. We are absolutely thrilled with the support you have given us thus far. And if you'd like to monetarily support what we do, you can find us there at patreon.com/PSVG. But the most important thing to us is just that you listen and maybe share what we do with someone else who may enjoy it as well. I do want to give a quick shout out to our Patreon producers, Coach Hulk, Edwin Callow, Devin Tyus, Kevin Austin, Chris M. Bonesaw, Barry Cathcart, and Paul Calico. Thank you so much for what you do in helping make this show possible. And as I said at the top, we are a member of the Dice Tower Podcast Network as well. So if you enjoy our conversations about board games and would like to dive deeper into that world, we encourage you to check out the Dice Tower Podcast, as well as all the other members of the network. No matter what type of board games you enjoy, there's a podcast on the network for you. So enough of the housekeeping stuff, Josh. It looks like we are on a news week. So what is some of the news that has been going on in the tabletop world?
Well, as you exclaimed, everything is on Kickstarter, and that's not a lie.
There are so many Kickstarters right now.
So I'm just going to run through a few real quick, and then maybe we'll focus on a couple of them. So first off is Rome from Red Raven Games. You might be familiar with It's Ryan Lockett. He does Above and Below, Near and Far, Megaland for the people who have been an entry game for you because Target had it like super cheap and exclusive. He also does a game called Haven, which is part of this Kickstarter if you want it to be. But Rome is, I would say it's a smaller version of most of his games. A couple of the options when you back it, you can get some promo cards for their other games as well. It's very nice looking, the same art style as all of his other games. So I would say that's definitely worth checking out. We also have Papillon, or Papillon. That's Papillon probably. It is a area-controlled tile-laying butterfly game with very nice art. Not a butterfly fan, but that's just me. It also has like 3D. They have modular plan bases, so like think of pop-up books, but flowers. There's 8 of them that come with that game. We have a game called Tramways, Dystopian Expansion. So this goes to Mars and the Moon. This is expansion to the game Tramways. I would imagine the game you can also get in Kickstarter as part of the bundle. So I don't know. Have you heard of the designer's other game, Card City XL? I'm not familiar with that title.
I am not familiar with it either. This was a game that wasn't even familiar with Tramways, the base game. So the fact that it's getting an expansion clearly must have done okay.
Yeah. It looks interesting. Another train game, you know. If you're interested, take a look at that guy. We have Ignite from Ginger Snap Games. This one really had my attention because it is a miniatures game, but it's also a deck builder, which I think is unique.
Mm-hmm.
It's expensive. It's a big game, so you know, and I only say it's expensive like that because it's a game I actually really was interested in. But like your base game is $89.
Yeah,
and you know that's just for the base game. If you want the whole thing, the 2 expansions, you need to drop $189. But James Hudson, who is from Druid City Games, he was all over the place saying how much he loves this game. You know, he's not super vocal about like games he's buying per se, unless like he's promoting his own game. So, I mean, that says something.
Right.
But to give you the definition of their definition is a battling deck builder where asymmetrical races fight for survival across a variably built board, competitive or co-op for 1 to 6 players. So yeah, you're kind of building your board similar to like Carcassonne, except there are larger sections of the board. But I guess the appeal would be that the board will be different every time you play it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's essentially the battlefield. So you're moving your miniatures across that while using deck building to use powers, movement, things like that. So it looks very interesting. I wish I could afford it.
Right.
Any interest from you?
I'm really interested in this, but it's kind of the same boat because those first 2 or 3 that we talked about, Rome, Papillon, Tramways, you know, obviously Tramways is an expansion, so you need to have the base game, but those are all in I think Rome, if you get the basic version, is like $22. And Papillon, I think, is in the $39 range or something like that. Tramways, I think, is in the $30 range as well. So, you know, we do talk about the price of board games on here often. And there are good options right now, it seems, on Kickstarter for games that are a touch more affordable. But of course, Ignite is the game that I'm really interested in. And it's pretty expensive at that $189 mark, which granted, you can get in less. You can get in at that $89 mark without any of the expansions. And I guess if I don't know that I'm going to like the game, maybe that's what I want to do.
Yep. Same thing we always run into with these Kickstarter like things. Like if you're like me who doesn't want to miss out on anything, like that's a tough thing. But yeah, you certainly don't have to go all in.
Well, it's interesting to note too, and I always try to take a look at this because I think it's interesting that for Ignite, the base game pledge at $89 currently has 175 backers. The all-in pledge at $189 has 556.
Yeah.
So,
like we said before, I don't know where these people are getting their funding from, but they must all be independently wealthy board gamers out there somewhere.
yeah, or they just don't try to play as much as we do.
Yeah, that's true. They don't have consoles or
right. This
other
is their
hobbies
only
outside
hobby.
of the house.
Mm-hmm. Well, and not in a bad way.
No, not in a bad way. I'm just trying to compensate for the money. Yes. Yeah, moving on before I incriminate myself anymore. Endangered, which I talked about briefly a little while ago when I interviewed Grand Gamers Guild at TotalCon.
Mm-hmm.
This is the game that was donating money to a nonprofit when it was on Board Game Geek promoting itself. It is now on Kickstarter. It has art by Ben Flores and Beth Sobel. Beth Sobel, I'm a huge fan of her artwork. Sorry, I'm blanking on what I want to say. You can check her out. Her artwork's all over the place. So in Endangered, 2 to 5 players take on the role of conservationists working together to try to save one species. It comes with 2 modules, one for tigers and one for sea otters. It's a flip-sided board, so you have one on the other side. But there are other modules featuring endangered animals that are planned for the future. And yeah, your goal is to save them in the game. The artwork looks real nice. It's 2 to 5 players. I think I mentioned that already. And Endangered is going for, what are we looking at? $50 for, the base pledge. If you pledge 55, you get the Kickstarter edition, including some custom dice, nice coating on the box, and all the stretch goals. You can go higher. They have a bunch of other pledges you can add too. But yeah, the game looks real nice. Nice art. You have specialty characters, 4 roll cards. They're just 3,500 short of their goal. So
right.
They're pretty close.
They're pretty close.
17 days left. So if that interests you at all, that's going to hit, I would imagine, in 17 days.
Oh, yeah. And it's on my saved. I haven't backed it yet. I do think it's interesting, though, because you had mentioned how they are working with the Center for Biological Diversity to, this game has tried to raise awareness and things. That there is a special pledge level that if you choose it, the Center for Biological Diversity will receive 1 copy of Endangered as part of your pledge. So you would get a copy and that center would get a copy that they can then send those copies out through educational initiatives. And any money that is donated via the tip jar will go to the Center for Biological Diversity. But apparently Kickstarter prohibits direct donations of Kickstarter campaign funds to nonprofits, apparently, in this situation. So they can't give $5 from each game directly to the Center for Biological Diversity, which is, I think, interesting that Kickstarter prohibits that. I'm sure there's an excellent reason, probably why.
Yeah.
But that's kind of disappointing. So it sounds like when the game is published and available to purchase in stores, then proceeds from the sales or a certain percentage of proceeds from the sales will go there. But for this Kickstarter campaign, the only way to donate is either pledging at that specific level or including money in the tip jar.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't understand why they do that. Well, I mean, I do to an extent.
So.
Yeah. Okay. So next we have Vintage Racers. This is an antique car racing game called Vintage Racers. That's pretty simple. It's also in Kickstarter. It's by Mr. B Games. It's 2 to 4 players. It's a micro game. But you can play up to 8 players if you have 2 sets. So there's a combining, which is nice. And it's about 15 minutes per session. They're way over their goal. And you get the game for $13. So that's not bad at all. If you can even get 2 copies for $24, that's even better. Mm-hmm. Comes in a small box. It very much reminds me of like the pocket games. It's a little bigger size, but if you're interested in checking it out, it's just called Vintage Racers. There's 5 days left, so by the time you hear this, there's 2 days left.
Right.
3 days left, something like that. So you'll still have time if you're interested in old stock cars and things like that. It looks like a cool little racing game. Yeah, I mean, you can buy one for a friend.
Indeed.
Nice. And then we have Oceans. Now, Oceans is from North Star Games. It is the next game in the Evolution series, but it is a standalone game. It is not an Evolution game per se. And you can imagine Oceans are not small, so they're getting their own game for a reason. There's a lot of content. And it looks like it's going to be a heavy game. Excuse me. It's 2 to 6 players, but the games are going to go from 45 to 100 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is big. This, for PAX Unplugged, they were showing this behind like closed doors, and it was like impossible to like play this game because everyone wanted to play it. So, they're very popular just from the Evolution games alone. So, just riding off of that pedigree, like, they crushed their $20,000 goal with $323,000.
Mm-hmm.
There's still 17 days to go. You can get this for $45 at a standard pledge. And their description is: enter a vast underworld cosmos, a mysterious, interconnected world of sharp teeth, glowing eyes, and black ink. And $70 will get you the deluxe edition. So there's a lot of gorgeous art. They have really cool little fish markers, and the board setup is unique to even Evolution. So there's definitely a lot to check out. Even have an expansion called The Deep that gets into the deeper, crazier fish you might see in the ocean that people show videos of. So check that out if you're interested as well. Kyle, any interest in Oceans?
I think the big question is, Josh, are you interested in the $3,000 edition of Oceans?
Yeah, I mean, if I had unlimited money, I would already own it.
So
I'd pay them $5,000 just to get it early.
So it is kind of cool that they basically, what they did is they are auctioning off as part, you can get the original artwork. And the $3,000 one is that you get the box cover painting. So you get the original painting that became the cover, the box cover of the game. There was a number of $500 and $600 and even like $900 pledges that gave you other paintings from the game. And those are all sold out. So it's just the big $3,000 one to get that box cover painting. I'm kind of impressed that all those other ones sold.
Yeah. One backer each.
Yeah, one backer each. So, but I am interested in this.
It's really nice.
It is. It's a very distinct style, and it looks really good. I am interested in this. I don't know if I would get the $45 or $70 edition. That's a tough one for me because $45 is a great price. That is a really good price to get into a game. And $70, I know you get like acrylic fish instead of cardboard fish, but I don't know what else the difference is.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a huge difference between the two.
So maybe $45 is the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
But I suppose it is 215 translucent fish. So that is a lot of fish.
Custom, and then you get a custom printed food bag. And and it comes to 220 custom Oceans card sleeves.
Oh, well, that's probably worth it then.
That's
so maybe,
nice.
Yeah, maybe I will get the deluxe version if I choose to get this. It's definitely on the short list. It's something I'm considering. One of the things that is not on this list of games, I know we still have one more to go through, is I did back Valley of the Kings Premium Edition from AEG, which for $50 is pretty solid. That it comes with tarot-sized cards and sleeves for all of it.
Yes. So
another one that you can check out if you want to as well. Another Kickstarter, because they're all Kickstarters are going on. All of them.
They're all Kickstarters. The last one we're going to mention is, for Kickstarters, is Cosmic Run Mining Colony from Dr. Finn's Games. This is the next game in the Cosmic Run series. You guys heard Kyle talk about, well, you heard Kyle and I talk about Cosmic Run Regeneration, but Kyle's was more of a review and mine was an add-on to that. This is a 1 to 2 player standalone game. And yeah, I mean, you go into Mars to build a mining colony. It definitely has a unique look to it. It kind of reminds me of like Patchwork on Mars. Like you have like a board where you're like kind of like building your base. Mm-hmm. And then you have a main board where it looks like you're recruiting pieces for your base from the main board. It's $25, gets you the base version of the game.
Yep.
That's also really good.
It is.
If you pledge $40, you can get Mining Colony and Cosmic Run Rapid Fire, which is the 1 to 2 player Cosmic Run game that they released that's separate from the base game as well. So plus you get a promo pack and and then there's a few other ones where you can get like the other Cosmic Run games, and then the final one, the $400 pledge gets you every game by Dr. Finn, including early shipping on games that aren't Mining Colony, sorry, and then you get a bunch of promos, and he's thrown in like a slightly damaged box of some things. Like there's only two of the things. There's only two of those. So if you don't own any Dr. Finn games and you want them all, $400 gets you all. That's a good deal.
That's a good deal. That's a lot of stuff for $400.
Yeah. So I'd say check it out. I mean, check all these out for sure. But the ones that have my interest are Cosmic Run, Oceans, Endangered, and Rome. But I am chilling it on Kickstarters for a little while, at least. Even though I really want to get a lot of these Kickstarters.
Yeah, it's challenging because I want to get a lot of them as well, because it is a number of these, other than maybe Ignite, are really good prices.
Yeah, the prices are really good.
You could get 3 of these, for getting, or 4 or 5 even, if for the price of going, the all-in version of Ignite. So I don't know. I do encourage you though to check out Cosmic Run Mining Colony. They're not dudes. I mean, they have a little money to make. They're only at about $9,000 of the $25,000 goal, and I really enjoyed Cosmic Run Regeneration. And our friends from Gameosity actually help with the Kickstarter video and give you a brief overview of the game. So I think check it out for that price. It is a pretty good deal. And especially if you're looking for just a straight up 1 or 2 player game, those are not hard to come by, but I think important things to have in your collection that you can just take out, and when you're trying to fill some time here or there, really nice to have some 2-player games at your leisure. So getting either the $25 version or the $40 version that also comes with Rapid Fire, there's a couple of really nice 1 to 2 player games you can get taken care of and added to your collection.
Yes, absolutely. So next we have, more specifically, had District 9, the board game. That was on Kickstarter. It was $100 will get you the game, not add-ons included. However, it has been canceled by the creator about 6 days ago from when we're recording this. The creator was Weta Workshop, so that's pretty big.
Right.
My guess is it was canceled because it had only reached about half of its goal with 7 days left, and the price point was the entry point was high, like $100 for I would argue, cult film, not a mainstream fan favorite film. In fact, I bet there's a bunch of our listeners who have never seen the movie.
It's a pretty good movie.
Yes, it is a very good movie. And then you can get the whole thing for $169. So as far as a miniatures game, $169 I don't think is too high for getting in like the whole thing, but it still is a high price point. But it looks really cool. I really liked the look of the board. I liked how the miniatures looked. It's just one of those things that maybe it was canceled for a different reason, and we'll see it come back at some point. I didn't read the updates to see why they canceled it.
Do you know, did they shipped their other Kickstarter that they did, Heavy Hitters, right?
Yeah, Heavy Hitters is a huge, huge, huge success.
Okay, I thought so, because I knew that they made a ton of money off of it. I just assumed that it shipped. I have no idea, but it looks like there's enough information here on Board Game Geek that it very clearly must have. Yeah.
So it looks like they're still planning on getting the game out. They have a survey on their page that they wanted some feedback from game players, and it looks like maybe they just didn't hit the mark that they wanted to hit for production value or even gameplay. So we'll never. I don't think we'll never really know why. But
right,
you can't get it just yet. Someday. Now, our last news is another board game by Steamforged Games. If that name sounds familiar, it's because they are very popular in the Kickstarter community for huge IP games that get turned into board games. When I say IP games, I mean video games.
Mm-hmm.
This is no different. This is a board game called Devil May Cry: The Bloody Palace, which is all the rage online. People are talking about the Bloody Palace breaking controllers, so why not make a board game out of it? So they yesterday, the 8th for us, announced an exciting partnership with Capcom to bring Devil May Cry to the board game realm. And they're going to be, they're coming off of Dark Souls, the board game, Resident Evil 2, the board game, future Horizon Zero Dawn. And we can expect the Kickstarter for Devil May Cry this quarter, which is exciting as well. You can take control of Dante, Nero, Trish, or even the Mysterious V from the newest game. And you're trying to outscore each other by building the most impressive attack combos and achieving the highest style ranks. So that should be interesting how they translate that into a board game. What do you think about this news?
I'm really interested in this. It looks cool. I agree. I'm interested to see how they translate style into points. How does that work from a gameplay perspective? So this is something I'm definitely keeping an eye on, and I will be interested once it comes to Kickstarter how much it's going to cost. I know that they said you can win a copy of the Bloody Palace at the full Sparta level pledge of over 150 pounds. So I have to imagine that this is not going to be a very inexpensive game.
Oh boy.
But so I did enter to win a copy of it. We'll see what happens.
You might as well, right?
Right, exactly. So I figured might as well try. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, they've been doing stuff. They're the ones who did, the Horizon Zero Dawn game and all that stuff like you were saying. So yeah, I'm interested to see how this goes. I really would like to see the rules or a video breakdown of someone playing it or something, because I am interested to see how exactly this works. It kind of reminds me of that one fighting game that was a board game based off the TV show
Spartacus.
Spartacus, thank you. Kind of when I look at the board, that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
Which was
supposed to be a good game.
Yeah, I liked Spartacus. I played it. I thought it was pretty fun. Yeah, I had played it. It was a long time ago that I played it. But, I would like to see exactly where this goes. And it just seems that more and more video games are making that transition into having some sort of licensed board game, and not just a Monopoly licensed board game or something similar, but a true tabletop game with miniatures and all these other good things. And it's a trend I'm excited about. It's a trend I hope continues. It's a trend, though, that I also hope becomes a little more reasonably priced.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing. The better 3D printers get, the lower these games will eventually get.
They've been saying that for a really long time.
Well, they're still using molding processes.
They are still using molding processes. That's true.
As soon as they can start 3D printing them, it'll be way cheaper.
I agree. That is very true.
They might not want to lower the price, though.
Also possibly true.
They may not do that.
Well, and I do wonder, you're right, because the 3D printing, I have a friend who has a 3D printer. It's still a very slow process.
Yeah.
So obviously mass producing, even if there's 50 miniatures in a game and you need to make, and you're selling 5,000, 5,000 copies of the game, that would take a long time. So it makes sense why they still produce them the way they do.
Yep. There'll be like a technological hurdle that it jumps someday where all of a sudden it's going from, one mold in 3 hours to 15 molds in 20 minutes.
Right.
It'll change.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else in the board game world you want to talk about, sir?
That is all of the board game news in front of my face.
Excellent. Hey, let's talk about some video game news.
Let's do it.
Apparently, rumors are abound that Xbox Live and Game Pass are going to be combined into one monthly subscription for $14.99 a month. Now, if you are a month-to-month user, this would be a $5 savings. But if you purchase them yearly, it doesn't save you any money.
Right.
Josh, this was just inevitable, right? This was going to happen.
Yeah, I just imagined it would be more expensive. As long as this is an option, not a mandatory, I'm 100% on board with this. I think it's great as an option. I think it would be crazy for them to make it a bundle that you just have to have.
Right.
Because obviously the big draw to, well, here's what I like about it. You're not losing money if you are you just buy it yearly already. So if you're already paying for both, you're not losing anything, but you're not gaining anything.
Right.
Maybe just a one less other subscription fee.
Right.
Just coming out at one. This obviously is great for people who are doing month to month if they're interested. The thing is, I think some people who do month to month do month to month because that's all they can afford.
Right.
So they might not want another subscription or can afford it. But it's nice. It's smart for Xbox because you eliminate the crowd who cancels when they don't see any more Game Pass games they want to play and then resubscribes. That's good. And then they're not going to cancel Game Pass because then it also cancels their Xbox Live.
Right.
So they're going to keep that subscription. So Xbox is getting that extra money. I think this is like they're saying that this is going to launch when they release info on the digital Xbox One, but they say later this month, but they also said later this month, last month. So who knows when any of this will be announced, if it will at all. What do you think? You subscribe to both. I'm assuming you do them both yearly. So
yeah,
does this mean anything to you?
Since I do them yearly, not really. I wouldn't at this point change to doing it month to month because when I do these things yearly, I typically am looking for a deal. So if something goes on sale for a year price of it, I will purchase it and then get it for less than the typical cost. So from that perspective, theoretically, it actually costs me less to do yearly than it would cost me to do month to month since I tend to buy them in your increments. Like I can't remember the last time I paid full price for a year of Xbox Live or PS Plus. Can't tell you how long, So for me, this actually is of no interest because of that, because of how I shop for those things.
Right.
But that takes effort, right? That takes taking time to look at deals from time to time to know roughly when my subscription is up each year. So if it's something you just don't want to think about, which my guess would be what Xbox is hoping, is that it's just going to go, they want as many people paying month to month as they can because canceling is hard. I don't think you can even cancel on your Xbox, can you?
No, you have to go on their website to do it.
Yeah. So canceling is hard. So once you get going, it's one extra step rather than making a once a year purchase to say once every 12 months, like 12 times a year purchase that you're making.
Yeah.
So it's harder to get people to stop doing that. Here's my question for you. Do you think when the next version of Xbox comes out, not this discless one, but whenever, 2020 or the next actual version of Xbox, do you think there will be a way to separate Game Pass and Xbox Live, or do you think it will just be one thing at that point?
I think their goal is to have them together. I think this might be like that test to see how it works. I mean, yeah, ultimately, Microsoft wants you to have both.
Right.
Like they're both services they provide. So if people jump on this and subscribe this way, that might be the only option. They might just say, this is our cost.
Right.
And here's the monthly fee or here's the yearly fee. But then that yearly fee will be larger. It won't be this thing where now you're paying the same. I think it would be like your benefit to getting monthly is you get them cheaper.
That seems totally backwards.
I think, yes. But if you think of like the subscription models of like Netflix and Hulu and HBO Go, they're smarter. I think they'd be smarter to adopt the cheaper monthly because you have more people signing up for it that way. And then you're not having people like Kyle who shops the sales and gets them way cheaper. You're always going to get that profitability. I mean, they'll do whatever they want, but I think that from a business standpoint and with all these streaming services out, I think it's smart to give your discount to the monthly subscribers instead of the big time purchases. But I'm not marketing.
I can see that. Well, no, that makes sense because I feel it seems that those who are purchasing a year at a time are probably more committed. That those are the people who are already your hardcore quote unquote audience who are committed to whatever it is. I have PlayStation Plus through 2021, I think right now. This is what it is. I don't have to worry about it because I bought it when it was $40. So, but yeah, I do like the fact that right now Xbox is just giving options, and I think they are going to see what fits best and what sticks best. And that's going to help inform their future decisions. And maybe they'll realize that we just need to have a lot of options of that what works best. Or maybe they'll say, hey, 80% of our consumers are using this particular method, so this is the method we're going to go with because clearly it's what people want.
Yeah.
So interesting. So we'll keep an eye on that. I'm sure we'll get official word on that sooner than later. Hey, Josh.
Hey, Kyle.
Are you a big fan of the Duke of Sussex?
I could take him or leave him.
Okay.
Just like anyone else in the royal family.
I mean, 6th in line for succession to the British throne. Pretty big.
It's a ways down.
It's a ways down. Apparently, Prince Harry, not a big fan of Fortnite.
Yeah, he's getting to that age where he's old.
In fact, thinks Fortnite should be banned.
Yeah, problems of living under monarchy. They can do stuff like that.
What do you think of all of this? Here's what Prince Harry said. He was doing an event at a YMCA in London. And when talking about it, he said, quote, "It shouldn't be allowed. Where is the benefit of having it in your household? It's created to addict, an addiction to keep you in front of your computer for as long as possible, and it's so irresponsible. It's like waiting for the damage to be done and kids turning up on your doorsteps and families being broken down," unquote. That's from our good friends at Game Informer.
Yeah.
You
shouldn't be talking about the problems of addiction, I don't think, to other people.
I try not to talk out about things I don't know a lot about. I do it sometimes, though, right? I draw conclusions. I think to myself, I'm a reasonably smart person. This seems like this should be this way, so it's got to be true. What are your thoughts? Is Prince Harry talking a little out of turn here?
He's under pressure to say things like this. I think that he's out of touch.
Okay.
And you have to, so to try to empathize with him, you have to look at how his childhood was.
Right.
And how he was raised. And sure, a game like Fortnite or video games in general probably make no sense to him as an addictive thing. Like, all you hear about is, like, I don't know that he hears about this, but sports athletes addicted to Fortnite, kids addicted to Fortnite, all these things. This is coming from a kid who knew when he was old enough he had to join the military.
Yeah.
It wasn't an option.
Correct.
This is from a kid who knew growing up the rest of his life is going to be all about business. This is a kid who was, as soon as he was old enough to drink, got all that out of his system, apparently, and lived that life in a very small fraction of the time we get to live that life. So I want to empathize with the dude. Like, it must have been tough. And there's probably no way that his wife is going to let him go into their house and play Fortnite. Like, at this point, like, it's just the indoctrination of the royal family. Like, I could be totally wrong. This is what we just said. You might walk into Buckingham Palace. There could be 15 flat screen TVs, and they're all watching Overwatch League or playing Overwatch. And who knows? But the impression that you are given of the royal family is it's tea and crumpets, and they read books a lot. And that's the impression that they give. So who knows what's going on? But yeah, I mean, it just seems weird for that to have happened.
I agree.
As a story in general.
I agree. It seems like it should be stories of news of the weird or news of the odd or something like that. My partner, Erica, is a huge fan, actually, of the royal family. She is very well versed in, and not just today's per se, just the idea of monarchy. She can tell you the succession going way back and have conversations about who is in what line for all of that. And I told her about this and said, hey, Prince Harry doesn't seem to be too big of a fan of Fortnite. And she just looked at me and said, okay. And I said, here's all the things he said. And she goes, okay. And then I was trying to so I was like, well, maybe I'm not going to be a fan of Prince Harry anymore. And she just said, okay. I really wanted to get some sort of, like, have a conversation about why he would say this, what's his role, and why would this be something he would care about or comment on. And she just was not engaging me in that conversation very effectively.
Good for her. That's smart.
It was smart because I really wanted to know, why does Prince Harry suddenly care so much about Fortnite? And to be fair, in this conversation / article / interview, whatever exactly it was, he did talk a lot about the negative effects of social media on kids and those things as well. So I think it probably was more of just a look at the effects of being in the digital world and that impact has had on children. And I think you could have, I don't think it would be unreasonable to try to have a discussion about whether social media and the digital age has had a net positive or net negative impact on the lives of youth.
Right.
I think that could be a conversation that reasonably one could have, that you could likely come up with some decent data that shows the negative impact that it's had, right?
Right.
I think it's very challenging, though, to figure out whether it has outweighed the positive. And that's where it becomes very murky and gray.
Yeah.
So
sorry for my clicky clackies. I thought I was on mute the whole time I was doing that.
You're fine. You're fine. We're just channeling our inner flux deposed.
Yeah,
no big deal. So, final video game story we're going to talk about this week is actually, there is now a documentary on Netflix about the development and making of the game For Honor. And it's called Playing Hard, and follows the development of the Ubisoft title. And it is a full-length, full-on documentary. It's 90 minutes in length. It starts 4 years before the game is released, maybe even 5 years before the game is released, from the start of like initial pitch to finally starting to work on it. And it's interesting because I've only started watching this documentary. I haven't finished it yet, but it is very interesting that at a studio like Ubisoft, I guess I didn't know exactly how this worked, but that basically if you work at a specific Ubisoft studio, you kind of pitch within that studio, here's the game that I want to make. And then someone, the studio head, whatever at that studio says, okay, we will give you X amount of time and X amount of money to make basically a prototype, if you would, and come up with what exactly you want to make. And then you need to bring that to Ubisoft headquarters and present it to all the Ubisoft bigwigs. And then they decide from all the different studios that they have, what games they're going to greenlight.
Wow.
So not only do you have to compete within your own little part of Ubisoft to get your project greenlit, then you have to compete against all the other Ubisoft studios to get your project greenlit.
Nice. So
it's really interesting, actually. That's all the further I am in the documentary. I'm only 20 or 30 minutes into it. I'm very just starting to skim the surface, but it definitely is a full documentary. It is interesting that, unless I was doing something wrong, which is very, very possible, that the documentary is not subtitled, but they do speak French in it a lot. So you have to turn on closed captioning. At least I did, because I just assumed that at some point, I thought maybe that this first part they were talking about was going to be very short, so there was no subtitling. I don't know if the production company is French-Canadian or what exactly specifically it was, but there definitely, at least when I started watching, it was no subtitling for any of the people speaking in French. So I had to turn on closed captioning so I had any idea what was going on.
Netflix has a history of forgetting closed captioning subtitles in
really?
some of their films, so it could be that. It happened in a few movies they did. I think Beasts of No Nation was one of them.
You're right.
They didn't have subtitles, and then like 3 months after the film came out, they fixed the problem.
Now that you say that, I remember that. You are right.
Yeah, so
maybe this is the same situation.
Maybe.
So I've just been watching with closed captions. It's fine. But you can watch that now on Netflix. Like I said, it's called Playing Hard, and it's about the development of For Honor. So
I just added it to my list. I had no idea this existed, and I'm such a fan of For Honor, so I can't wait to watch this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, that's all the video game news that we have to talk about this week.
Woo!
Woohoo! Moving on. Topic of the show, Josh, open world games are kind of all the rage, right?
I guess.
I mean, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of open world games. You could argue maybe games as service. But there's a lot of open world games these days. And on our episode a couple weeks ago, Jamie Stegmeyer mentioned that he's developing an open world tabletop game.
Mm-hmm.
And he had asked us a bit about open worlds and what we look for in them and what we like in them. And we talked about it really briefly. But since we've been so focused on tabletop the last few weeks, and spoiler, we're going to be focusing on tabletop again for the next couple of weeks with some guests that we have lined up, we wanted to take some time to talk about open world video games, because having Jamie ask that question about what do we like about them, like what is the thing that draws us in, that makes us stay with the game, I realized we had never really talked about the topic, and I honestly had never really thought that in depth about the topic.
Right.
So it seemed like a really good time to jump in with Jamie's topic fresh in our minds and talk about some open world games. So to start, Josh, what makes an open world game? We're going to come up with a definition that is going to universally be accepted and can be applied to every situation to determine whether or not a game is open world. So, if you want to start with your definition, that'd be great.
Start with the most complicated question right after that. I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit on what you just said, because I don't know that I have an answer for that. So I'm going to read to you the explanation on Wikipedia about it, and
okay,
so we could see if we agree with it or not. Because right before you start reading, it says from Wikipedia, this article may need to be all in bold and rewritten entirely.
Very reliable.
To comply with Wikipedia's quality standards. So here we go. So in video games, an open world is a virtual world in which the player can explore and approach objectives freely, as opposed to a world with more linear gameplay. While games have used open world design since the 1980s, the implementation in Grand Theft Auto 3, 2001, set a standard that has been used since. Games with open or free-roaming worlds typically lack the invisible walls and loading screens common in linear level designs. Generally, open-world games still enforce many restrictions in the game environment, either because of absolute technical limitations or in-game limitations imposed by a game's linearity. That's a word now. Examples of high level of autonomy in computer games can be found in massively multiplayer online role-playing games known as MMORPGs, or in single-player games adhering to the open-world concept, such as the Fallout series. The main appeal of open-world gameplay is that they provide a simulated reality and allow players to develop their character and its behavior in the direction of their choosing. In these cases, there's often no concrete goal or end to the game. So, after all of that, the first thing I want to address for me is that I believe linear gameplay can exist in an open world game.
Interesting. Say more on that.
So we had a chat in our Discord today when we asked people for questions. I won't intentionally spoil any questions, but Horizon Zero Dawn came up. I fully believe that Horizon Zero Dawn is a linear open world game, but you don't have to play it linearly.
That's really hard to say.
So it doesn't sound right. So you can play it open world if you want. Yes, certain things are locked up to certain progression points where you can't go do something. But the world itself, you can, I believe, and to my memory of Horizon Zero Dawn, is you can go anywhere. You just can't necessarily progress the story where you're going.
Right.
So if I look at my map that's all blacked out, I can go to all the blacked out areas that you're allowed to go to, because part of the map is just the end of the flat Earth. So it's a big giant ice wall. So you can't really go anywhere else. And maybe those people had just been playing video games and they didn't realize that those do have flat Earths, those video games, but not real life. And then I think that the Fallout comparison is apt. Like Fallout games are typically after Fallout 3, well, after Fallout 2, are considered traditional open world games. But games even Lost Odyssey, games like some of those RPG games from years past, they're essentially open world games, but the story's linear. So, and I still think that's true for Fallout. There's a linear story to Fallout.
There is.
There's a ending. There's ways to get to that ending. And there's things you have to do to get there. So even in open world, I don't think that linear is the enemy. And I think that kind of comes across a lot in conversation about open world gaming.
Right. I think when I was trying to define what an open world game is, I was at work today thinking, no, we're going to talk about this tonight. And I was trying to come up with a definition of what an open world game is. And I think that obviously can be very hard. And if we're going to play a game later, you don't know this, but I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of games. I'm going to run through a whole bunch of games and ask you whether or not they're open world or not.
Oh, geez.
It's going to be great.
Yes to all.
But when I was thinking about open world games, I came up with 3 general things that I think for the most part, when I think of them, kind of create an open world game in my mind. And I think you could get more nuanced even than what I'm going to. And I think that my thoughts on it leave a lot of room for nitpicking and definition. But here's kind of what I was thinking. I think number one, that there has to be kind of what the Wikipedia definition said. There has to be some sort of free roaming with ideally none or very limited restriction on player movement. Maybe you can go to that place and there's really high level enemies there, so you just die, but you can still go there. Like, that's fine. So that's one thing I think of, is that generally there's going to be some pretty free or roaming with little restriction. I also think that things tend to be scaled properly in the sense of, and I always go back to this game just because it's my favorite one, who does it. There's no overworld. So like Chrono Trigger, when you start traveling over the overworld, like your sprites get small and you travel over all this grassy area and you have random encounters. Yeah. I think you're doing that. I tend not to think of that then as an open world game. Open world is everything stays roughly the same as far as my proportion to it.
Right.
The final thing, and this is an odd one, I think, but I do believe is really accurate. You're outside a lot. You're just outside. You're outside a lot. A
literal open world.
Literal. Can you think of an open world game where you spend most of the game inside?
No, because you're not experiencing the world.
Exactly. You're outside a lot. So those are my restrictions on an open world game. It's a lot of free roaming with very limited restrictions or player movement. Things are scaled identically pretty much the entire game, and you're just outside a lot. What do you think of my thoughts on an open world game? Is that too broad?
No, I think they all make sense. I think you also have to have an illusion of a never-ending world. Like they say in the thing, like, that would lack invisible walls. Well, you can't design a game that doesn't have walls. A game world has to end.
Yep.
I think that it's important that an open world game does not utilize a lot of load times.
That was going to be my next question for you, is because what is the impact of load screens on open world games?
It eliminates the illusion of an open world once you have load times. The problem is people are so quick to get upset about long load times, period, that they get mad. Like, wouldn't you rather wait 15 minutes for Fallout 5 to load and then it never loads again in your game time? Or do you want a situation where you have Anthem, where your loading time is long, but then you have loading times in between either missions or free roam, which is technically their open world?
All right, we're just going to move to this game now, and then we'll come back. Here we go. Josh, open world, yes or no? Forza Horizon 4. Is it an open world game?
Yes.
The most recent God of War.
That's tricky. I'm going to say no.
Okay. Metal Gear Solid 5.
No.
Anthem.
Yes, only in free roam.
Okay.
Free play.
Firewatch.
Oh, Firewatch. That's no. The illusion of open world. Does that count?
Okay. The Sims 3.
Oh man, you're killing me. The Sims 3? No.
No. Okay.
No.
Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
No.
Bloodborne.
Not enough experience. No.
Any of the Dark Souls games?
No, I don't think that they're open worlds.
Okay. Terraria.
Hey, listeners, don't come at me if you disagree with me. No, I don't think Terraria is open world either.
Minecraft.
I knew you were going to ask about Minecraft. I think yes, because you define the world. Terraria is a little similar to that, but not. I don't think as open as Minecraft.
Okay, so Forza Horizon 4, you said yes, and I think pretty.
Do you have
clearly.
definitive answers?
I don't. I'm just asking your opinion. I don't have definitive answers at all.
Can you give your opinions when you read them back?
Yeah, we'll give my opinions. So Forza Horizon 4, I think pretty clearly Forza Horizon 4 is. Like, I think it's a driving game, so people sometimes are like, well, it's a driving game. But I think that game, very much open world. You load in, that's it, right?
Yeah, yep.
Awesome.
You just load into races if you want to stop and do a race.
Right. So, God of War, you said no. Why do you say no for God of War?
I think only because there's parts where, in God of War, there's multiple, technically, worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And there's moments where you have to stop and go somewhere else if that's what you want to do. I think it's like open environment.
Okay.
And I guess that just comes down to semantics, maybe, like your definition of the world, or in my opinion, the area, because you definitely are limited to where you can go in the main story, like in any of the maps.
Okay. So what about then Witcher 3? Because you have to load between continents.
No, I don't think loading eliminates it.
Is it just because The Witcher 3, the continents are so vast compared to how big it is in God of War?
Maybe it's because you have a lot more free roaming space, a lot more places to go.
Okay.
I just feel like God of War is self-contained, and I feel like Witcher 3, or even like a game like Fable, is like much broader of environments.
Okay.
But I don't know.
Okay. Metal Gear Solid 5, you said no.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's like that and Tomb Raider, they're just like action adventure games. Like, I don't think they're trying to give you the feeling of an open world. I think that each thing you do feels like its own thing.
Okay. You said the Anthem, yes, but only in free play.
Yeah, because the free play, like, you literally load and you have 3 or 4 different spots you can load into in the free play, but you can uninterruptedly fly to the other loading spots once you've picked a spot to spawn with no loading. The only time you get loading is like if you go into like a cave, which is weird. And sometimes there's nothing in there.
Right.
But it's still part of that open world, which is where that loading time thing gets tricky. But even in like Fallout 4, there's loading times when you go to different places. Just the loading time for the caves and then loading back into the open quote world is much less significant than when you originally start.
Okay.
So it's like loading like an underworld map, like an underground map, part of the open world.
Okay.
Or they could have just added another 15 minutes of loading time and all the cave systems are included. But yeah, that's defined by walls. I mean, you can fly right off of them though. You don't, I'm sure there are invisible walls somewhere, but I think that plays more into the how much time you have to go until you run into the end of the open world. I think that's important as well.
Okay.
It helps with that illusion of an open world.
So for games like Anthem that have those loads when you go to cave systems, how does that compare when you have games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey or The Division 2? That once you load in, there's nothing. There's never another load in the game unless you leave the game completely.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't necessarily know how games like The Division do that.
I know, right? It's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it?
Unless they're loading during fast travel, or like when you unlock an area and it cuts to a cutscene or something. And the loading time isn't too bad for The Division either, so I think that's pretty good.
I guess now that you say that, there are loads when you go in The Division, when you go watch a story cutscene, there are loads there. Actually, now that you say that. So
that might be where they do it, but you don't get the impression that they're doing it. That ties right into the whole open world feel. The whole point is to create this illusion. Someone hit on it in the Discord. Discovery. It's such a powerful word in the open world conversation.
Right.
Discovery is key.
Right. So you said no to Firewatch. Have you played Firewatch?
I have, but
because you can go pretty much everywhere once that game starts, can't you?
Can you though? Because I don't know that you could ever. Like, we don't know that there's barriers. It gives you the impression it's open world, but I don't know that you could. Like,
I know that you have to.
It's like if you just turn in go one direction, you're going to end up like something's going to come up. I bet. That's just me not having enough experience.
Spoilers for Firewatch. I think at some point you do, if I recall correctly, I think you get an axe that like lets you cut through like a little part that you couldn't get through before.
Yeah,
I think if I recall correctly, but otherwise, I'm pretty positive you could walk almost everywhere on that map during the game.
Well, then I would consider that open world then.
Like I said, I could be wrong, but I believe that's true.
Yeah.
So, okay. The Sims I just thought would be fun to put in there because I haven't played
when
The
you
Sims
said
in
it,
so
I
long.
thought Sim City, so I was like, oh, maybe Sim City is open world.
That was what I was going to put in there too. But anyway. And then I was struggling with Terraria, whether or not that was, because I think theoretically you could go everywhere. You just have to get the stuff to be able to go. So is that the game naturally gating it?
Right. Well, that's when we encroach on is Madden a RPG or not?
Right.
This is the dangerous territory.
Is Madden an RPG? Yeah. That'll be next week's show.
Yeah. I quit.
Okay.
Coach was up for me.
All right. So obviously some back and forth about that a little bit, but I think for the most part, I agree with a lot of the things you said. I don't necessarily know that I would consider God of War to be an open world game either. I don't want to use the term because I think it's kind of markety speak, but what Naughty Dog talks about, a wide linear story where you can kind of go walk around the edges of things, but you're always being funneled toward this very specific thing. You know, God of War kind of I think they talk about it as like an amusement park where it's like the hub and spokes. So you always come back to the middle and you go out on these spokes to go do things, but you always have to come back to the middle part of it, which makes sense. I think that works well for that game, and not that if a game is an open world, that means it's bad by any means. So here's my next question for you then. Open world versus sandbox. One and the same? Two different things? Can some be both and some only be one? What's the deal?
I think some can be both, but I think that the implication of a sandbox game is the ability to create within the game.
Okay.
Where Minecraft would be a sandbox game.
Okay.
Or Fortnite could technically be considered a sandbox game. Maybe more the Save the World version than the Battle Royale.
Mm-hmm.
Games like that where you have the ability to alter what is given to you. In like the game itself, like Disney Infinity would be a good example.
Okay.
Of a sandbox game in my mind.
What about a game like Just Cause?
I haven't played a lot of Just Cause to be able to speak on that from my, like, I know you can interact with the world uniquely in Just Cause.
Mm-hmm. Is that enough to be a sandbox?
I don't know. Like, do you consider Red Faction a sandbox game? Because I think that would be maybe along the same lines with a fully destructible environments, but you're not building back up. So I guess what I would challenge my own like preconceived notion on sandbox is, do I include building and destroying in a sandbox game? And I don't know the answer to that.
That's okay.
But I would say that there's an argument on both sides for it or against it. As far as the destruction versus building aspect.
Would you consider Breath of the Wild to be a sandbox game with the flexibility and variety of how you can approach tasks in that game?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that Breath of the Wild really, like, regardless of my thoughts on Breath of the Wild, I really feel like they nail the open world version. And I'll tell you something that did happen to me while playing it that really made me kind of realize how much of an open world game is once you complete the plateau where you start, you can go to that Cocorico village, and like you see it on your map. So I'm like, okay, I set my waypoint, and then you don't understand the scope of the map until you start to walk to this village. So I like a moment when I was doing that where I really realized, like, I said to myself, okay, they got their point across. Like, I immediately realized how big the game was. So that really made me think, yeah, this is a open world game that I didn't know was an open world game. Maybe you could consider it a sandbox because you have a lot of things you can do with crafting. And that is essentially building and taking down of things. So I could see the argument for it, but when I look at it, I strictly see it as an open world game.
Gotcha. I tend to think of sandbox games as places that you can create and destroy it, like literally like you could in a sandbox, which doesn't necessarily mean physically building a structure, but means, hey, I can play in this area and do things kind of however I want to, and it'll work out. I probably would call Just Cause a sandbox game because however I want to go in and have fun blowing things up, I can go in and have fun blowing things up however I want to.
Okay.
Are there still checkpoints and a story to follow and all that stuff? Absolutely there is. But along the way, I can just go have some fun and play and do cool, awesome things in ridiculous, over-the-top ways. And I think that Breath of the Wild would fit that too. I think it's very much an open world sandbox where it's open, but then you are just playing within that. You are making kind of your own fun as you're going along. Like you would in a sandbox of like, hey, here's some sand, do what you're going to do. I'm going to make my own fun while I'm in here. That's how I tend to think about it, which again, I think many people could argue then that would be most open world games because you could choose to do things in however you wanted to a degree, but that's neither here nor there, I suppose. So, okay, as we kind of get towards slightly wrapping up this conversation, what are things that you like to see in an open world game?
Things that I like to see in an open world game. Well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like open world games in general aren't my like favorite types of games. Because I mean, I've talked about this a dozen times since we started podcasting, but I don't like what most people like about open world games. I understand the appeal to people, right? Like the ability to play a game and go anywhere. I 100% get that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, when I play a game, I want to enjoy my time playing it.
Mm-hmm.
And all of my experiences with like original open world games has just been negative. Like I spend a lot of time doing something and then I get punished because I went the wrong way. And some people love that discovery aspect. I like to discover things too on a path. I'm Dorothy. I'm following the yellow brick road to where I need to be. That's what I like. And then everything that I experience on the way, I hope it's good. But I'm also weird because I'll play games in the Division or games or Tomb Raider or God of War. I'll spend hours looking around areas to try to find the little things that are hidden. Or like if I'm playing Diablo and I see an arrow that tells me to go this way, I go the opposite way first. Mm-hmm. Because I also want to explore the whole map. So maybe that's why I don't like open world, because I like to have all of the fog of war lifted. So I do like the discovery portion of it, mm-hmm. but I don't like being punished for discovering.
Right.
I don't like wondering what's over here in this corner and then being murdered by people who are 15 levels higher than me.
Right.
And I will never, like my experience with Fallout 3 has defined me as a gamer. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I exited the vault, I went left into the mountains for a while looking for stuff, and I died because I came into an encampment of people way higher than me. Mm-hmm. Well, same thing happened to me in Breath of the Wild. I played Fallout 4 because it was in Boston, and I had, I had to.
Right.
And I got 20 minutes in, I couldn't walk anymore because I was over encumbered with things that I thought I needed to have. And I didn't like that I had to make a choice of what to let go because mm-hmm. I was afraid of letting go of the wrong things.
Right.
So those are my issues that I have with the open world. So you asked me what I like. I told you everything I don't like. What I do like is, so I use Horizon Zero Dawn, my favorite game of all time. I like that it has the open world feel. Mm-hmm. It is arguably an open world game, but I can hit start and I can see where I need to go next if I want to go there next. I like that. I like in the Division 2 it says, in Borderlands 2 it says story mission. Mm-hmm. I like that. If I want to skip side quests, I like that I can go do that story mission and progress the story. So for me, a little direction and a lot of choice is important to me in an open world game. What about for you? What is it? Because obviously for us, I think we differ a little bit on our open world gaming preference a little bit. I think we have similar like ideas of what we like, but for you, what do you love or what do you like about open world gaming?
For me, my expectation and desire for open worlds is really not that different from my expectations and desires from games that that are linear action story games, which tend to be third-person action games are kind of my jam, the thing I like the most. I could play Uncharted over and over and over and over and over again. I like that style of game. I could play a Tomb Raider over and over again. I like that style of game. My expectations of those games are not that different than my expectation of open world games, which makes me tend to be very picky about the open world games that I enjoy because I care about characters. Even if the story isn't that good, I want to like the characters. And I think that's one of the reasons I have always struggled with, oh man, people are not going to like this. It's one of the reasons I've struggled with Zelda games is I don't really think Link is that great of a character.
Right.
I want to care about someone in the game and be interested in their story to a degree and why I'm doing this. And I want there to be a mystery connected to the character that is pulling me forward and that I'm trying to figure out. That, I think, for me is what I like in games in general. That's what I play. If I'm not playing a arcade game chasing a high score, that is what I want in my games and in my open world games. And that's why I tended to really enjoy the Assassin's Creed as a game series, why I liked Horizon Zero Dawn, why I tend to lean towards, I enjoyed like Far Cry 3, why I tend to like that type of game a little bit better than Fallouts and things like that, because it's more, for me, it's about the characters and not necessarily as much about the systems and the loot and all of that other good stuff. Now, there are exceptions. I'm enjoying my time with The Division 2. My character doesn't, it's a silent protagonist. I have no idea who really any of the other characters are, but I get shiny gold guns, and that's exciting. So there can be other things that are sprinkled in there that help me motivate me when I might not otherwise be motivated. But for me, I think that's what I really enjoy. And similar to you, because I tend to prefer linear style games, I want the option of knowing exactly where I'm supposed to go if I choose I want to go there and exactly what I need to do if I decide I want to do that. Now, if I only have a half hour, I might go run around and do something else for funsies. But I always want the option of knowing I can jump back on and just go down that golden path to follow the yellow brick road.
Yeah.
And another reason why I really like Spider-Man. I like the characters. I like all the things. And there was a ton of other stuff that I could do in the city if I wanted to, but I could follow the main path if I wanted. And I just enjoyed that. I have a lot of fun with those things. There's not a lot. And like I said, I think obviously the things I don't like are the things that are the exact opposite of that. I appreciate people who have the patience and the desire to go out purely for that sense of discovery and get so encapsulated in a game and a environment that they just want to explore every nook and cranny of it. I wish sometimes that stuff enjoyed me, that was enjoyable to me, that I was captivated by those things. I'm just not as much. So for me, that's what makes it hard, is that I care about characters. And like I said, even if a storyline isn't particularly good or there are problems with the narrative, if I care about the characters, it's much easier for me to overlook those issues. So that is what I am looking for. Final thing we're going to do on this topic, and then we're going to move on. I didn't prepare you for this at all, but I probably should have. 3 favorite open world games.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
And this isn't like etched in stone. It's okay if they change, but if you just had to recommend 3 open world games that would help people have an understanding or a perspective as to what you look for and like in an open world game, what are 3 that you'd recommend?
So Horizon Zero Dawn, obviously, would be the first thing I recommend. Do you consider the Mass Effect games open world games? Those aren't open world, right? Because you can technically fly to other planets, but you're not really like landing on them to do things. So I wouldn't. I'm just trying to use that as a cop-out answer. Well, I mean, Forza Horizon 4 is an easy recommendation for me, since it's already something we talked about. So, and I guess it's tough to pick one of these games, but probably Assassin's Creed Revelations.
Oh, okay.
Would you consider that open world?
Mm-hmm.
It's not as open world as like Origins was, but
Yeah, I still think so.
And if you're trying to get into a recent game, maybe try the Assassin's Creed 3 remaster that came out. If someone's looking to play a game.
Gotcha. My 3 that I would recommend or throw out there: Assassin's Creed Black Flag.
Okay.
Still really enjoy that Assassin's Creed game. Horizon Zero Dawn, obviously a game that we both really enjoy. I've talked a lot about on this podcast. And the other one is going to be Middle Earth: Shadow of Mordor, the first of those 2 games. Yep. I played the crud out of that game and absolutely loved it. Again, not a great story. I like the character. I thought it was fun. So those would be 3 that I think exemplify my love of open worlds. So, Josh, we got a decent amount of feedback about this topic in the Discord and via Twitter. Why don't you take us through some of the thoughts that people had, sir?
I will. I should have included Far Cry 5 on my list, but I didn't. and some other things I'm looking at right down here.
If you want to, you could just change the ending to make it really convenient for everything you've been working on and just say that it's Far Cry 5.
Ooh, the BioWare burn.
No, I was Deus Ex Machina at the end of Far Cry 5.
I was just making fun of. I thought you were making fun of BioWare changing the ending to Mass Effect 3.
Oh no, not at all. That wasn't even what I thought about at all. And we actually didn't even talk.
I didn't finish that yet.
What's that?
I said, "Don't spoil New Dawn for me."
I haven't finished it yet either. But that's we actually never talked about Jason Schreier's article about the development of.
Oh, I'm sure we can talk about it next week.
Anyway, on to the feedback we got from folks.
Okay, so let's start with playing Nintendo via Discord. That's Donnie Reese for you PSVG heads. So we asked for the community feedback. Do you remember the exact question you asked?
It basically was, what are examples of some of your favorite open world games? What do you like about them? What are things that draw you away from them? Just general, when you think open world, what do you like? What do you dislike? What are some good examples of games you enjoy?
And what are your thoughts on them being a board game? I think was.
Yes.
All right. So Donnie says Wind Waker, Breath of the Wild, GTA 3 and 5, Far Cry 5, Arkham City. For me, open world video games are fun when they have visual style appeal. Travel is fun, and there is a reason to do things as you make your journey. How this translates to a tabletop game, I have no clue. I think it would greatly need to rely on imagination, so detail and description would be paramount. Otherwise, I don't know if I feel like I'm in another world per se. So I agree with Donnie for the most part. The board game part obviously is the trickiest part of this implementation. So I think that's tough. Maybe we should, at the end of these, we should probably address what we think about the board game aspect of it.
Yep, that is going to be the last thing we do.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Next we have Dat Ninja Dev. That's Devin via our Discord. He says, Watch Dogs 2. It has fun, relatable characters. All the side missions actually progress the story and aren't repetitive. The music is great, and it's a fun take on San Fran. What makes me stick with the game is when I'm playing it and don't want it to end. When I'm purposely doing side stuff because I don't want to leave the game world. If it feels like a chore, then I'm going to drop it. Like Donnie, I don't know how this would relate to a board game other than like Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, oh god, there's no way I can properly say this, right?
I will say highly intelligent.
That's a great name.
Like, great Discord name.
So it's Hylian, like Legend of Zelda, and then Intelligent put together. I want to give him props for his name. Via Discord. Also just joined our Google Stadia podcast with Donnie, so welcome to the team. He says, my favorite things in open world is freedom. I don't like being stopped from going somewhere because I don't have an ability or a quest or an item. It's one thing to not be able to go somewhere because enemies are too hard, but I don't like being stopped. That's what hurt Horizon Zero Dawn for me. I really liked that game, but halfway through I stopped exploring because I kept getting stopped. And then I would end up going to all the places I was exploring during the story. So the open world seemed pointless. Games like Skyrim, Oblivion, Breath of the Wild give me the freedom I enjoy. I don't like icons all over the map. I like discovery. So I hit on that part a lot. When he said I like discovery, I think that really resonated for me. But I like icons all over my map to an extent because I like checking them off the map.
I do too.
Although I will say the first Watch Dogs was a little much for me when I started it. The map was just full of icons. You didn't like unlock icons to then like clear. They were just all there. PSVG Kevin via Discord, he says, Fallout is all you need, except 76. So that's what general consensus seems to be online, that people are not happy with 76. And then we have super listener Splig at Dopalicious via Twitter. He says, how do you make traveling fun? This is a question to us. One of my least favorite parts of open world games, especially with huge maps. I'll pay to fast travel every time. Hint, Spider-Man is fun traveling. I think he nailed it. Like, anyone who's doing an open world game should play Spider-Man or should experience Spider-Man on some level. And I should have included Spider-Man on my list. Spider-Man nailed a lot of the problems that I have with whether you consider it an open world or the illusion of an open world game. Like, it made the journey fun.
Mm-hmm.
And even though in Spider-Man the traveling is repetitious to an extent, it still felt like fresh and new every time because I would swing through buildings differently, or I would go a different path, or I do some tricks while I'm doing it. So I had a really good time with that. So how do you make traveling fun? That is a great question and a tricky answer. I don't have that answer.
Yeah, it's hard to do something other than have people just run.
Yes.
You know, maybe you give them a horse so they can run faster.
I know, right?
You know, but that's basically what the horse is. We're going to get there faster. And granted, they can do some fun combat things with that while you're shooting from your horse, or in games that have driving, you're then getting there quicker because you're driving there. But traversal is always the tricky thing, and you don't necessarily want people to be fast traveling everywhere. And that's the interesting thing too, right? Because when we play the Division together, I sometimes recommend we fast travel places.
Yeah.
When I was playing Horizon Zero Dawn, I never fast traveled anywhere.
Yeah, because you're trying to get ammo and parts.
Yeah, right. So I wanted, because, and not that I don't like the combat in the Division 2, but in Horizon Zero Dawn, I loved the combat. So I wanted to fight things the entire time I was going somewhere because I loved the combat.
Yeah. And it was like something nice to look at.
Right.
While Division 2 doesn't look bad, it's just, even though they changed the settings so much, it is still samey as you're like going through.
It is. You are in a dreary city that looks not great to look at, and you're running down streets with fulls of cars.
Yeah.
You know,
I do want to say maybe I should give Watch Dogs 2 a chance, because I just didn't enjoy the first one enough, but everything I've been hearing about it has been very positive. And if Devin is right, and I find it hard to believe that the side missions aren't repetitive, but they might not be.
Right.
That would be great if there was a game out there that the side missions weren't repetitive, because as much as I love the Division 2, I'm still doing side missions and quests that I'm like, haven't I been here before?
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like a similar lobby.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same mission, but I also understand they're trying to be like representative of the actual buildings in DC, so maybe they all do look like that.
Right.
But yeah.
So how does this translate to a board game then? How do you make an open world board game?
You know, I've been scratching my head since we talked to Jamie like 2 weeks ago about it. Everything that people said is valid. How do you make that into a board game? I don't know. Obviously, the Dungeons and Dragons route is the easiest, because you're just creating your own open world. But even in Dungeons and Dragons, you have limitations to what your dungeon master allows you to do.
Right.
So it's not even truly an open world. It is a setup story. Dungeons and Dragons might be the most linear board game out there, because you have a story that has been set and you have to follow this path that is being laid in front of you. Now, if you take games I was thinking about, so board games that exist that could potentially work to an open world feel, would be games like Arkham Horror, where you have a map, or even Fury of Dracula. You have these maps that is essentially an open world to you. You're not being limited to where you can go in the game. However, there is still a time limit per se and objectives to finish your quest. So something my friends hated about me is when we play the older versions of Arkham Horror is I always go to the Silver Twilight Lodge because I want to get into the club. And you can go there as many times as you want.
Right.
You can leave. You can go back. But just like in any open world game, the world is actively trying to destroy you as you're playing Arkham Horror. Things are being summoned. Bad guys are trying to defeat you. You know, remaining stagnant, you get punished. So I think that that's probably, in my mind, for games that I've played, keeping it in board games and not venturing off to war games or miniatures.
Right.
I think like the Arkham Horror series of games. I haven't played the Eldritch Horror, but I'm guessing it falls in the same line. Even like Mansions of Madness to a certain degree have the effect. Well, Mansions of Madness is more closed off, but like they have the a feeling of an open world where your decisions matter, but you can do whatever you want to a degree.
So here's where I was struggling with when I was thinking about this concept of that. Obviously, a board game is much more restricted, and you can see the entire thing because it's sitting right in front of you.
Yes. So
it's never going to feel as big, right? Because it's all right there. It's all just sitting there right in front of you. Yeah. So how is what I was trying to think of while you were talking was the idea of a game like Mice and Mystics or a game like even Stuffed Fables, right?
Yeah.
That you are progressing through a linear story, but while you're on there, you can go anywhere you want to on there. Might help you, might not help you, but you can go anywhere you want to that is on what is in front of you at that moment.
Right.
So is it literally just the freedom of movement to go to any space on the board and see what happens? And that might be beneficial. It might not be beneficial. Or is it something more than that? Because since you can see the entire thing the whole time,
yeah.
You know, do you need to travel to, go to, point X, and then once point X you get there, it opens up that next part to you. Not in the sense of it's blocking it off from you, but you are now having that sense of discovery. So a game like Seventh Continent, potentially, right? Where you can literally go, you land, what do you want? Up, down, left, right? Which direction do you want to go? Totally up to you. Okay, I'm going to go left. Perfect. All right, here's the card. Here's what happens.
But is the card draw random on that?
No.
It's not specific?
It's yep.
Okay, so I guess that's closer to open world than Stuffed Fables would be.
Right. In the sense of this is the card that's next, but then that card might have like 6 different options, and then you have to choose like one of the 6. So it's set, but it's not.
Yeah. If we're giving a discovery to the aspect of the board game part, I think that's a good example, and I should have mentioned Gloomhaven at the top too.
Right.
But when you play in Gloomhaven, like you have a choice. You can look at the map and where all the bad guys are before you start, or you don't.
Right.
But ultimately, someone has to, because as you enter rooms, you have to place bad guys. Like they're not visible to you until you enter a room. But the person who's looking at the map sees the whole map, and they can see where everyone is.
Right.
And when you set the game up, you need to make sure you set up the right pieces.
Right.
So even at that point, it's an open world with the illusion of. So the only part of Gloomhaven, I guess I would consider open world, is when you choose what mission you want to go to. Because then once you choose that mission, you are really tied down to what your options are in that part. Even though you might not be in a dungeon, you might be outside. But it's not. It's just a small segment of an open world.
Right. Honestly, that's why I go to a game like Seventh Continent. Even in some way, some legacy games, I think give the idea of you can go here, things are going to happen as a result of you being here. It might be good, it might be bad. We'll see how it goes. But in general, you have the flexibility to go almost anywhere you want to. I think this is a fascinating topic because of how I view open world games and the things that I care about. I think it'd be very difficult to translate the things I care about in an open world game into a board game. And
if you could give Jamie one thing that you would want him to put into an open world board game, could you? Or what would you say?
Man, that's a really good question.
I'll go first.
Okay, great.
Think about it. I think for a board game, there's obviously a huge challenge for an open world game. I think that if you're going to do an open world game, you want to give your players not just like the discovery aspect of it, but let them be a part of building the world. So maybe do a game that's where when you're designing the game, the people who are playing the game have options of creating this board, creating the world they're going to play in. It doesn't have to be legacy style, but think Carcassonne, but bigger, like segments, and it's done before the game has started. So like you build this map, and maybe on the map there are like locations that you go to, and maybe you have a scenario book like Betrayal, where say like you put down a 4 cube square and there's 4 different spots on it, and maybe there's one location on this tile, and the location is location 4 as an example. Maybe you have a book that has location 4. This is what is in location 4. If you do it like Betrayal, if you are playing this character, like give like 12 characters you can play. If we're going to pick like tropes, like if you're a paladin, section 4 is this. If you're a paladin with a rogue, section 4 is this. And that's a lot to do, but you might be able to create an open world where section 4 never shows up if your team is like randomly building the map, to the extent that maybe you play the game 25 times and you never run into the same situation. But obviously, I don't design games. I don't know how to design games, but I think the illusion of choice and the addition of discovery is really what, for me, is something that an open world game brings to it that's unique.
You know what I just thought of as probably the ultimate open world board game?
What?
Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective.
Oh, yeah, because you can technically be anywhere.
You can literally go anywhere.
Yeah.
And you go there, you might get information. You go there, you might not. And if you don't, that was just your turn. It's just over. It's the next person's turn.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, though, right? It gives you a scenario at the beginning. Here's what the goal is. Figure out how you're going to do it. 100% up to you. You can go any direction you want to. You decide what evidence that was presented or what information from that scenario is important. It might be, it might not be at the end. Who knows? You'll only know if you go discover and try to find out.
Right.
So, and there's never a quote unquote fail state, because the only way, I mean, I guess you can get it wrong, but you play everything through to completion until you feel good about where you're at. There's still a scoring that happens because you're compared to what the par time or what Sherlock Holmes time was in it and their logic. But it really is kind of the ultimate open world board game, because you can go wherever you want to and talk to whoever you want to about whatever you want to.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
And when I think of, because what I was thinking about and how I got to that is I went through Seventh Continent and the idea of you can go left, right, or whatever direction you want to. Then I kind of was listening to you talking and went to like Robinson Crusoe, how it's bigger, like you have undiscovered tiles, but they're larger. So you're, I'm going to go this direction or that direction to discover tiles to the north or to the south, but it's kind of up to me. And I kind of go where I want to. And I kept trying to think of where is the flexibility, like where is a game that you can really just go wherever. And then I started thinking of Letters to Whitechapel and all of those hidden movement games. But then there's usually restrictions on how many spaces you can move, that you can only move X number of places, but in Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, go wherever you want, do whatever you want to do. The problem with that game then, though, is that people sometimes say it's an activity and not a board game.
Yeah, I get that. It's definitely, and it definitely challenges the word board in board game.
Mm-hmm. It definitely does. It really does. But man, do I like it. It's so much fun.
No, I think that's a great example.
Yeah. So that would be my suggestion, is I think giving true, complete player freedom, and not at I don't want there necessarily to be a negative that happens where you lose something.
Yeah.
But that the worst bad is that just nothing happens, because there was just nothing. You went there and there was nothing there, because that can happen, right? Or you get a small thing. And it would be cool if you went to this place and you already have X item because you went to other place, then this happens instead of the other thing. That would be awesome. That'd be really cool. But then obviously the complexity gets great, right? Like becomes more and more layered. and more challenging and more difficult. And if this is just a game that's meant to be infinitely replayable, right? How do you do that? Because you're going to eventually figure out the puzzle.
Right.
So, yeah. Anyway, I feel like I failed there. I didn't give a good suggestion, I don't think.
No. I think it's a good suggestion.
Okay.
You can, you have to steal the whole thing. You can build off of that idea. I think it would work.
That's true. So that is it for our discussion on open world games. We obviously would still love to know what some of your favorites are. What are the things that you're into when it comes to open world games? And how do you have ideas about translating that into a board game? I would love to know folks' thoughts. Hey, I know our podcast is running long, but I've promised this for weeks, and I'm going to do it either way. I'm going to give an update on MetaSpring because we only have 2 games left to come out for MetaSpring. As you might remember, this is a contest we started back in January where we listed 10 games coming out this spring, and your listeners had an opportunity to submit what you think their Metacritic score was going to be, and the person who is closest overall is going to win themselves a free game of their choice. To a degree.
Whoa.
I said 2 degrees.
I just looked at the list. That's what my reaction was.
Yeah, so it's been rough. To say the least, mostly because of 1 game / 2 games so far. So, as a reminder, the games that folks had to submit their guesses for were Resident Evil 2, Kingdom Hearts 3, Crackdown 3, Metro Exodus, Far Cry New Dawn, Anthem, Devil May Cry 5, The Division 2, Mortal Kombat 11, Days Gone, and then the tie-breaking game was Yoshi's Crafted World. So all of those games, other than Mortal Kombat 11 and Days Gone, are out and scored.
Someone is doing very well.
Someone is doing very well. That is very, very true.
And I am beating you. That's also important to note.
No, you're not.
Oh, it's the lower?
Lowest number.
Someone's doing very bad.
Lowest number is the number that matters.
Someone is doing very bad.
Yeah. So basically, how the contest is scored is that if you guessed that Resident Evil 2 was going to get an 85, Resident Evil 2 actually got a 90, so you'd get 5 points for that because you're 5 points away. So you want the lowest number possible because that means you got the most number of games as close to what their Metacritic score was. So right now, I'm mostly going to just talk about Josh and I because I always want to drop names of other people if they don't feel comfortable with that.
We don't want to let them know they're doing well either, though.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about people who are in first place just so they recognize that they are.
No, don't let them know.
Okay. Well, no. I'm just going to give a brief update. So, yeah. I try to be really positive about how games are going to do this spring, and for the most part, that worked out well. So, Resident Evil 2, Kingdom Hearts 3, Metro Exodus, Devil May Cry 5, The Division 2. I was doing really well in my scores for those. Josh was doing really well in his scores for those games. Then there was this little game called Anthem. Josh, Anthem currently is at a 55 on Metacritic. 55. I said Anthem was going to get a 90. You said it was going to get an 86. So we both lost a lot of points on Anthem, but luckily everyone lost a lot of points on Anthem. I think the person who was closest only got 30 points because I think we had a couple people who said 85.
Yeah.
But otherwise, everyone was super far off on Anthem. So right now, though, I'm sitting at 76 points overall, 35 of them coming from Anthem. You were sitting at 82 points overall, 31 of them coming from Anthem.
I think Days Gone is going to destroy me.
I think neither one of us did great. Neither one of us did great on Days Gone, and I think Mortal Kombat 11, if things are looking like they are, it might be closer to your score than my score, not that they're that far apart. But, yeah, the biggest differentiators for us, I think, actually were Crackdown 3. Yeah. Because I was off by 8 points. You were 12, I was 20. But then I'm just lucky because pretty much everything else, I was just a few points closer than you were. So it kind of whittled that score down. So we're actually pretty close to one another. We're not too bad. So like I said, I'm sitting at 76. Josh is sitting at 82. The current leader, I will say, I won't say who it is, but they're sitting at 72 points is the current leader. This person was off by 36 points for Anthem, but nailed exactly Metro Exodus. So they got 0 points for Metro Exodus. Was only off by 2 points for Far Cry New Dawn. Overall, just had a really, really solid showing for every game other than Anthem. Every other game they're within 8 points of. So that has kind of put them into the lead. But there's probably right now... Oh, actually, I take that back. Oh, no, that is the leader. Yep. But there's probably right now, I would say, 4 people who are really vying for the win at this point. A couple people for sure are really, really out of it, but it's okay. I will say overall, people are much further off on their scores this spring than we were in the fall. And we've had less people get games exactly right this spring than we did in the fall. We had most people got like a game either exactly right or like a point off. And that has been less common this time around. And I think that makes the biggest difference. But also because we talked about, we have games like Anthem, that's a new IP, Crackdown 3, that was in development heck for a long time, so people didn't know exactly how that was going to come out. Kingdom Hearts 3, that was, a 10-year sequel, like it was just a lot of really interesting games that came out this spring to kind of see how it all is going to shake out. So Mortal Kombat 11 is out next week, is that right?
April 23rd. So
a couple weeks still.
2 weeks.
And then Days Gone is the 26th. So very end of April, early May, we will wrap this up. But just like I said, if there's probably about 4 people right now who are kind of vying for that lead. Josh and I are duking it out ourselves. But in a couple weeks, we will have those final results. So like I said, current leader is at 72 points. Half of those points being because of Anthem. No big deal. Literally exactly half of their points are from Anthem. And then what would that be? 7 games make up their other 36 points. So there we go. There's an update on MetaSpring. That is it. Josh, we're almost done. But it's that time where we like to give a recommendation for something not gaming related that's helping us live a well-rounded life. So what would you like to recommend to the dear listeners this week?
So I am going to recommend, this is not family friendly, but it is on Netflix. It is called, it's a stand-up special. It's Jimmy Carr, the best of Ultimate Gold Greatest Hits. And I love Jimmy Carr. He is a hilarious comic. He's one of those comics who says a joke, and stops. He says, one sentence joke, and, that's the joke. Not always, but, he has, kind of delivery sometimes. He'll be in the middle of, a joke story, but then he'll stop and, say something, and that's the end of that joke. And then he'll be, moving on to, whatever else he's talking about.
He actually writes jokes. It's not observational comedy like most people do these days.
Right.
He literally writes one-line jokes.
He also hosted a show I talked about before on Well-Rounded Life on Netflix. And I forget the name, but it was a half comedy, half... Yeah, The Fix. Thank you. So I really like him a lot. If you didn't like his... he has this trademark laugh that he used a lot in The Fix because it's just his laugh. He doesn't laugh as much like that in his stand-up because my wife hates that laugh that he has. But I really thought his stand-up is hilarious. It's definitely a little raunchy, and he definitely uses... He's British, so he uses the hard C word a lot. So if you have kids, don't watch it with them unless you're in England and you use that language all the time and it's no big deal. Or Australia. But yeah, that's my recommendation for this week. If you want a good laugh, watch it when the kids aren't around.
I have seen it. It is very, very good. It is also very, very not family appropriate.
Yeah.
And this isn't my recommendation, but if you are looking for a family friendly stand-up comedy special, Nate Bargatze's
That's very good.
The Tennessee Kid.
Yeah.
Totally 100% fine to watch in front of the family. No swearing, no real taboo topics at all. He was on season 1 of the stand-ups, so I do recommend watching. And I think he's season 1, episode 1 is his. So I do recommend watching that before you watch his stand-up special. But yeah, that's an easy recommend if you're looking for a stand-up comedy special for the family. So, but yes, Jimmy Carr, that guy, my goodness.
He's very funny.
He is very funny. My recommendation this week is actually going to be a podcast, though I think obviously you should listen to our podcast for sure.
It's not a board game podcast, is it?
It is not a board game podcast.
Okay, good.
If you are into Game of Thrones, which is coming back this Sunday, returning there is a podcast that I enjoy listening to that does a roundup and review of Game of Thrones each week. It is called A Cast of Kings. It has David Chen and Joanna Robinson are the people who host it. David Chen is one of the hosts of the Slash Filmcast, and Joanna Robinson is a writer for Vanity Fair. So each week they come back and recap all of the things that happened on the episode of Game of Thrones. And it's kind of nice because Dave I think he's only ever read one of the books, and so he doesn't have a lot of insider knowledge. He just watches the show from a television critic / film critic perspective. And then Joanna has read all of the books, helps run I think she helps run a Game of Thrones con, and is super on the insider list as far as knowledge and spoilers and all of this stuff. Now, the podcast is spoiler free. They don't spoil anything that hasn't happened in the show that's happened in books or that Joanna knows. But it's just very interesting to hear the two drastically different levels of knowledge as they discuss the show. So whether you are someone who has read all of the books and is super into it, there's going to be someone who you can relate to. And if you're someone who just digs the show, there's someone you can relate to. And I really recommend it. It's called A Cast of Kings.
Nice.
All right. So that is it as far as our show this week. Josh, what do you say we wrap this thing up?
Thanks for joining us, everyone. In addition to finding us on Twitter and Instagram at BoardWithVG, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/BoardWithVG. So feel free to give us a 5-star rating over there. Also, if you want to communicate in the more long form and you're not feeling social media, feel free to email us at boardwithvg@gmail.com. We tag our stuff with hashtag BoardWithVG, so please use that hashtag as well on all social medias. Whatever podcast service you are listening to us on, we encourage that you give us a stellar rating. That is whether you're downloading us from the PSVG feed, the Dice Tower Network feed, or our standalone Board with Video Games feed. You can find me on Xbox Live and PlayStation Network as Why So Serious. That's SIRRIUS. Please put Board with Video Games in the message so I know to add you and that you are a friend of the show. Kyle, where can they find you?
You can find me at all of the usual places: Twitter, Instagram, PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, Board Game Geek, all at Cyclocross, CYCOCROSS. As always, if you have suggestions for future topics, be sure to reach out to us on the social media, because we want to talk about what you want to hear about. And remember, everyone, whether it be board games or video games, never stop gaming.